He announced during our brief meeting that the company was restructuring to boost shareholder value. "Your position is eliminated effective immediately," he said. "My name's Clayton Reek." For 14 years, I grew Northrise Apparel's Eastern Division from the ground up into their highest performing unit, not through flashy speeches or corporate jargon, but through trust, steady effort, and honest work. I personally managed our key accounts, knew their concerns, their families, even their little quirks. Those relationships brought in $4.2 million in annual contracts. The new CEO, Brandon, had been with the company exactly 8 weeks. Harvard Business School graduate, sharp buzz cut, tailored suits. Yet, he never once asked me about the client bonds I'd nurtured. He never wondered how we'd managed 18% growth year after year while other divisions barely moved. Nor did he question why our two biggest clients, Suncoast Financial and Vector Properties, insisted on having me on quarterly calls. When security escorted me back to my office to collect my things, I noticed Alicia from HR couldn't meet my gaze. She'd been here 15 years, longer than me. The CFO, Thomas, passed by, then turned around. "Clayton," he started, but stopped himself. Instead, he awkwardly patted my shoulder and walked away. I packed quietly. Family photos, the fishing trophy the Vector Properties team gave me after our retreat, the handwritten thank you note from Diane at Suncoast for rushing an urgent order when her boss was in a pinch. 14 years. Reduced to one cardboard box, I nodded at security, then walked to my car without drama or confrontation. In my rearview mirror, I watched the glass tower shrink as I drove off. For the first time in 14 years, I didn't feel the weight of 30 employees and millions in contracts pressing down on me. You'd think that would feel freeing. Instead, it felt deeply wrong. I started at Northrise when they operated out of a Charlotte warehouse back then. We were fighting for corporate uniform contracts with local banks and healthcare firms. The Eastern Division was bleeding money when they hired me. I had 9 employees and a clear order: fix it or shut it down. Over those first 3 years, I personally visited every prospect within 100 miles. I listened to their frustrations with their current suppliers: late deliveries, shoddy quality control, inconsistent sizing. I fixed every one of those problems. My team grew, first to 15, then 25 people. We moved into nicer office space. I promoted Janice from customer service to account manager because of how well she handled tough clients. I hired Keith fresh out of design school after he showed me mock-ups that solved problems we hadn't even noticed. My son Dylan was 12 when I started at Northrise. Now he's 26, working as an architect in Seattle. My wife Jennifer stood by me through every late night, every emergency weekend call, every flight to save a client. "It's about building something that lasts," I'd tell her, and she believed me. 3 CEOs came and went during my time here. Each one appreciated what we'd built. The company grew from a regional player to a national contender. My division was consistently the top in growth and client retention. But last year's merger changed everything. Kestrel Group bought us, installed their own board. At first I wasn't worried. Numbers speak for themselves in business. But cracks began to show. Brandon Kerr arrived with his efficiency experts armed with spreadsheets. They didn't understand the relationships that held everything together. In meetings, they obsessed over client acquisition costs, never the client connections. 2 weeks before I was fired, Brandon asked me for a report on all major accounts. I gathered everything: contract values, renewal dates, growth potential. What I didn't include, because spreadsheets can't measure it, was how I'd gone to the funeral of Suncoast's procurement director's father, or how I personally inspected Vector's first big order at 2 a.m. to make sure their company-wide rollout went flawlessly. When Brandon's assistant scheduled our meeting for just 10 minutes, I knew this was happening to others. I just never thought it would be me. The morning after I was let go, I sat in my home office staring at my phone. No messages from work. Former work Jennifer brought me coffee and squeezed my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "They don't realize what they've done." I said I wasn't angry. That surprised me most. Instead, I felt a clarity I hadn't known in years. I opened my personal laptop and pulled up my contacts. Not the company database, but my own records. Names, numbers, personal emails. 14 years of real connections. The first call came at 9:30 a.m. Diane from Suncoast Financial. "Clayton, we just got a mass email about changes at Northrise. Please tell me you're not affected." I took a slow breath. I was let go yesterday. Silence on the line. "Who's taking over your accounts?" she finally asked. "They didn't say. I assume someone from Brandon's team." Another pause. "We have a contract renewal in 6 weeks. "I know, Clayton. I have to be honest. The board only agreed to stay with Northrise last time because of you. The prices were higher than competitors, but you always delivered, always solved problems before they became issues." I didn't respond immediately. I could hear her tapping a pen on her desk, her way of handling tough decisions. "I need to talk to my team," she said at last. "Can I call you back on this number?" "Of course." After hanging up, I went downstairs to the kitchen table. Jennifer was making lunch. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I think I will be." My phone buzzed with a text from Keith, my design lead. "Brandon called an emergency meeting, asked about client contacts for your accounts. No one's giving him straight answers. What's going on?" I set the phone down without replying. Later that afternoon, calls came from Harold at Vector Properties, Michael from Eastern Bank, and Stephanie at Bright Healthcare Systems. Each conversation followed the same pattern: shock over my departure, worries about what's next, questions about contracts. I was honest with all of them. I didn't badmouth Northrise or Brandon. I just answered their questions. Yes, I was terminated. No, I didn't know the transition plan. Yes, I'm exploring my options. By evening, Brandon Kerr had called me 5 times. I didn't return the calls that night. I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet, not of clients or contracts, but of opportunities. Companies that had tried to recruit me over the years, competitors who might value my experience and connections, even the possibility of starting my own consulting firm. For 14 years, I'd built bridges for Northrise Apparel. At that point, I faced a crossroads. Should I burn every bridge behind me or start building new ones for myself? I chose to build. Just 3 days after they let me go, Brandon's text messages escalated into phone calls, all of which I ignored, letting them ring straight to voicemail. Finally, on the 4th day, I answered. "Clayton, we really need to talk." His voice was tighter, more strained than before. "There are growing concerns with some of our key accounts." I stayed calm and said, "I'm sure your team can handle that." But he pressed on. "That's exactly the issue. Suncoast is threatening to pull their contract. They claim the only reason they stayed was because of you." I glanced out the window and watched a cardinal perch on the bird feeder. "That's their choice to make," I said flatly. Then he admitted, "Maybe we rushed too fast with these restructuring moves. The board's worried about potential revenue loss. We could discuss a consulting role for you during the transition." For a moment, the idea tempted me. Consulting would be easy money while I figured out my next step. Yet something about his sudden change of tone didn't sit right. "I appreciate the offer, but I need some time to think it over," I replied. Later that day, I met up with Jerry Campbell over coffee. Jerry had been Northrise's CFO before the merger and had been pushed out too. He still had contacts inside the company. "Brandon's freaking out," Jerry said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. Suncoast and Vector both sent official letters refusing to renew. Any idea why? They're blaming the loss of key relationships and leadership instability. Basically, corporate speak for "we only trusted Clayton," I said with a nod. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and worry for the people I'd left behind. Jerry continued, There's more. Brandon's told the board you're sabotaging the company, calling clients and urging them to leave. I slammed my cup down. I haven't told anyone to do anything. I've just taken their calls and answered honestly. That's not how Brandon's spinning it. He's building a case claiming you broke your termination agreement, might try to claw back your severance package. On the drive home, Brandon called again. This time, I let it ring. Listening to the voicemail later, his voice was almost pleading. Clayton, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We value everything you built here. The board authorized me to offer you a senior VP role, better title, better compensation than before. Call me back. We need to discuss this. That evening, Daniel Thompson reached out, CEO of Summit Ridge Outfitters, a smaller rival who tried to recruit me twice before I heard about Northrise. He said, their loss. My offer still stands: Senior VP, equity, and full control over your client portfolio. I told him I needed a few days to weigh my options. Later that night, an intimidating email landed in my inbox from Northrise's legal team, accusing me of violating non-solicitation agreements. The letter threatened legal action if I interfered with company relationships. I forwarded it silently to a lawyer friend. The next morning, my lawyer, Paul Henderson, called early. This is a weak case, he said. They're trying to scare you, but I reviewed your contract. You never signed any non-solicitation clause. The typical non-compete only prevents you from joining a competitor for 6 months. It doesn't stop clients from following you. I recalled signing that contract 14 years ago, back when the company was very different. The old CEO had been clear. This only stops you from taking our training and immediately working for a competitor. Nothing about client relationships. So legally, I was clean, completely innocent. If they tried to push it, we could countersue for wrongful termination. The abrupt firing without a transition plan for a senior leader wouldn't hold up well in court. I thanked him and hung up just as an email popped up from Janice at Northrise. The subject read, "You should see this." Attached was an internal presentation dated 2 weeks before my firing. Brandon had mapped out a total restructuring plan. It detailed eliminating my role regardless of performance, replacing seasoned staff with cheaper, fresh graduates, and raising prices on long-term clients by 15% upon contract renewal. A note on slide 12 said, relationship-dependent business model poses major risk, must shift to system-driven model to maximize margins. They hadn't fired me because I was failing. They fired me because I was succeeding in a way their spreadsheets couldn't accommodate. Even worse, there was a list targeting staff cuts. Keith, Janice, and 3 others from my division were marked for layoffs. After I left, I printed the document and sat at my kitchen table with it. Jennifer leaned over my shoulder. "They're planning to tear down everything you built," she said softly. "And blame you for whatever happens next," I added grimly. My phone buzzed. Another text from Brandon. "Board meeting tomorrow. Need to discuss reconciliation. ASAP, please call." I set the phone down and looked over the presentation once more. The final slide projected revenue after all changes. 22% higher margins, assuming clients stayed despite price hikes and reduced service. It was a fragile house of cards. I called Daniel at Summit Ridge. "I'm interested in your offer, but on one condition," I said. "I want to bring my core team, all 5 of us." "Done," he answered immediately. "When can you start?" 2 weeks, and I'll need official offer letters for everyone today." That evening, I called Keith, then Janice, then the others. I laid it all out. The termination, the restructuring plan, their names on the cut list. I shared Summit Ridge's offer. All 5 agreed instantly. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. I ignored Brandon's calls and emails. Instead, I booked meetings with our top clients. Not to steal them, but just to check in as a friend. I met Diane from Sun Coast for lunch near her office. "We're not renewing with Northrise," she said before we even ordered. "The real question is where we go next." I can't solicit your business right now, I explained. Legally, I have to be cautious. She smiled. I get it, but hypothetically, if you were somewhere offering similar services, we'd be very interested in following you. By the end of the week, I'd had similar talks with all 5 major clients. None had heard from Brandon or anyone else at Northrise trying to salvage those accounts. Meanwhile, Summit Ridge sent formal offer letters to my team one by one. They handed in their resignations at Northrise the following Monday. Brandon showed up at my house without warning. I was in the garage working on my old Chevy when his Mercedes rolled into the driveway. "We need to talk, Clayton," he said, anxiety written all over his face. "This has gone too far. The board is breathing down my neck, key team members are quitting, and clients are threatening to leave." "That sounds like a tough spot," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "But I've already accepted a role elsewhere." His face flushed with frustration. "You're joining a competitor. That breaks your non-compete agreement." "Summit Ridge isn't listed in my contract's restrictions," I replied calmly. "Paul Henderson confirmed that just yesterday." "You're talking to lawyers now," he warned. "Clayton, be reasonable. Whatever they're offering, we'll top it." I closed the hood of my truck. "This isn't about money, Brandon. Never was." "Then what do you want? Just say it." For the first time, I looked him straight in the eye. "I want respect for 14 years of building something meaningful. I want a conversation. Not a 10-minute dismissal. I want my team protected. Not cut just to make the numbers look better." His expression shifted as he realized I knew about the restructuring plans. "That was just a draft, a scenario exercise," he muttered. "Goodbye, Brandon." I walked past him toward my house. "The board will fight this," he called after me. "We'll sue you, Summit Ridge, everyone involved." I turned back one last time. "Go ahead and try. But before you do, ask yourself which will cost shareholders more. Letting me walk away quietly or a public legal battle explaining why your biggest clients and top talent left at once." He had no answer. A week later, I started at Summit Ridge. 2 weeks after that, my non-compete expired within a month. 4 of our 5 major clients from Northrise had signed new deals with Summit Ridge. Specifically requesting me as their account manager, I never reached out to anyone else at Northrise. Nor did I speak ill of the company publicly. I didn't need to. 6 months after joining Summit Ridge, I was reviewing quarterly results in my new office when Daniel knocked and placed a tablet in front of me. It was a financial news article titled, "CEO Brandon Kerr Resigns Amid Financial Shortfall." The story detailed how Northrise missed quarterly targets by 18%. My old division, the Eastern region, had lost nearly 40% of its business. The board had accepted Brandon's immediate resignation. I handed the tablet back wordlessly. "Not surprised?" Daniel asked. "Hard to build relationships with spreadsheets," I replied. That afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message from Thomas, Northrise's CFO. "The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss recovery strategies." He wrote, "Your name came up. Would you consider a conversation?" I didn't respond. Instead, I finalized our quarterly presentation for Suncoast Financial. Our team had delivered their new corporate uniforms 2 weeks early. Feedback was glowing. Diane had already introduced us to 2 more potential clients in her network. The next day, Jerry Campbell called. "Thought you'd want to know. Kestrel Group is trying to sell Northrise. The stock's dropped 22% since you left." "Who's buying?" I asked. "That's the issue. No buyers yet. Rumor is they're trying to contact you through back channels. The board believes you're the only one who can steady those client relationships." I thanked Jerry and returned to work. Later, I took my team out for lunch to celebrate 2 straight quarters of growth. Keith showed sketches for a new product line. Janice shared client feedback updates. We talked about Summit Ridge's expansion plans. No one mentioned Northrise. That evening, an email arrived from Eleanor Barnes. Northrise's board chair, Clayton, it read, "The situation has become untenable. We made a grave error. Would you consider returning as CEO? Complete autonomy, significant equity, board seat. Name your terms." I closed my laptop without replying. The next morning, I gathered my team. "I've been approached about returning to Northrise," I said. "I wanted you to hear it from me first. I'm declining." Keith nodded. "Figured they'd try eventually." Janice smiled. "Too little, too late." "Exactly," I said. "We're building something better here." That afternoon, I sent a short email to Eleanor. "Thank you for the offer, but I must decline. I'm committed here. I wish Northrise the best." 3 days later, the news broke. Summit Ridge Outfitters had acquired Northrise Apparel's Eastern Division in a strategic asset purchase. The press release hailed it as reuniting key talent with trusted client relationships Daniel had negotiated quietly, paying pennies on the dollar for what was once Northrise's crown jewel. The board had no choice. Sell to us or watch it collapse. I never needed to strike back directly. The market did it for me. 1 year after leaving Northrise, I drove past their old Eastern Division office. The Summit Ridge logo hung where Northrise's once did. The building looked the same, but inside everything had changed. We rehired some staff laid off during Brandon's brief tenure. We recovered 3 more client relationships that had faltered after I left. The division now earned more revenue under Summit Ridge than ever before. I parked across the street and watched employees head home, familiar faces mixed with new ones. They seemed happy, engaged, purposeful. When I got home, Jennifer was cooking dinner. "I drove past the old office today," I told her. She studied my face. "Nostalgia or closure?" "Closure, I think," I said. "Did you know it's been exactly a year?" She nodded. I remembered. That's why I made your favorite tonight. Over dinner, Dylan called from Seattle with news about a big project his firm landed. "How's the new job, Dad?" he asked. "Good," I said, "building something that will last." The same words I'd used at Northrise, only now I knew it was true. Later that night, I got a text from Jerry Campbell. Northrise's remaining divisions just got acquired by Gravora Group. Clean sweep. Nothing left of the original company. I put down my phone and stepped outside onto the deck. The warm spring air smelled of new beginnings. I thought briefly about Brandon and wondered what he was doing now. I hoped he'd learned something, though I doubted it. I thought about all those years building bridges for a company that never truly valued them. The late nights, missed family dinners, postponed vacations. The sacrifices had been real, but so were the relationships I'd built in the end. Those relationships followed me, not because I asked, but because we built something genuine together. No spreadsheet could ever capture that value. No restructuring could erase it. The next morning, I arrived early at Summit Ridge. I reviewed our quarterly projections. Now, 30% above target, I glanced over our client retention numbers. 97%, the highest the company had ever recorded. Just then, Daniel stopped by my office. "The board approved your proposal," he said with a smile. "The employee ownership program kicks off next quarter. Keith and Janice will lead the implementation team." I nodded in agreement. "They'll get it done right." Daniel leaned casually against the doorframe. "You know, when all this began, I thought we were just bringing in a skilled executive and some valuable clients. I had no idea we were signing up for a whole new way of doing business." "Relationships over transactions," I replied. "Always." After he left, I opened my desk drawer and took out the fishing trophy Vector Properties had given me years ago. I placed it carefully on my shelf. Right beside fresh photos of my Summit Ridge team. Revenge wasn't what I wanted. Nor was vindication. What I needed was to build something that would endure. This time I had